Every avoidant plays the same 5 games when they're falling for you, but here's the thing. Avoidants don't just fall in love. They unlock it, one secret level at a time. And every level comes with a hidden game, a test, a puzzle. If you pass, you gain access to the next layer of who they really are. If you fail, well, then the avoidant protects themselves and hides behind their walls. All right, let's pretend this is you and your goal is simple. You need to survive the 5 levels of this harsh video game. There's levels of darkness, there's levels of deception, there's levels of emotional lag. But if you survive all 5 levels, you don't just win the game, you unlock the real them, the one they keep hidden. All right, let's start at level 1, the world of glitches. Now I'm calling this level the glitch test game. This is when the avoidant suddenly becomes inconsistent, but not in a lazy or uncaring way, it's just glitchy. They'll show up for you emotionally in a moment that feels intimate, but then pull away right after. Some of the most common examples I've seen is, they'll stay up all night talking to you on the phone and then ignore your texts the next day. They flirt, they tease, they even get vulnerable and then act weirdly cold 2 days later. Now here's the twist. They're doing this on purpose, but not consciously. It's a glitch in their emotional coding, a panic response. Here's an avoidant on Reddit talking about this exact concept. I reject romance in my life even when I desperately crave it because if someone rejects me without knowing me, I frankly don't care. My walls are built so high that something like that has no impact. But if someone gets me vulnerable and likes me for a time, but ultimately decides they don't like me or worse, thinks I'm a you-know-what, then that's the ultimate rejection. Avoidants don't fear rejection from strangers. They fear rejection from intimacy. So the second they start catching feelings, they run a test, a glitch. They blip out emotionally, just long enough to see what you'll do. If you chase, if you panic, if you start needing too much, well, that confirms their fear. I knew it. Getting close equals danger. But if you hold your ground, if you notice the glitch and you don't react with anxiety, well, that's when you survive level 1. And then you have to contend with level 2, the Frozen Tundra. All right, you survived the glitch. You didn't chase, but now they freeze. Their messages get shorter. They stop initiating. Affection disappears. You feel the warmth vanish, almost like it never existed. Welcome to the Frozen Tundra, where everything looks fine on the outside, but emotionally it's negative 30 degrees inside. So what's really happening? Well, let's pull up my world famous avoidant death wheel. Now, typically we see level 1 happening right at the beginning before they even commit to you. So right around stage 1, the I want someone to love me stage. This is their initial test. That's when they glitch out to see if you'll stick around. If you do, well then you've got the Frozen Tundra waiting for you. That begins happening right in between stages 2 and 3. This is when they're in deactivation mode, a classic avoidant defense. When feelings become too strong, avoidants numb themselves to survive. This isn't silence out of disinterest. It's a shutdown triggered by interest getting too real. Here's how a therapist friend of mine puts it. Avoidants deal with vulnerability by emotionally flatlining. Not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much and don't know how to metabolize it. So here's the tricky part about the tundra. You start doubting yourself. Did I say too much? Am I being too needy? Is this all in my head? And that's exactly what the game is designed to do. Because if you start pushing for a connection here, they retreat deeper into the snowstorm. Or to simply use the avoidant death wheel to illustrate, this is where they cross over from stage 2 to stage 3 and start noticing some worrying things. All right, so how do you beat this level? Well, you take a page from the secure attachment book. You stay warm without demanding warmth back. If you hold on to your center, well, that's when the cracks form in the ice. You don't just survive level 2, you bring a match into the cold. A few days ago, Chris here posted this success story in our community. I got my ex back. It took 22 months. We've been back together for nearly 2 months now in a new and healthy relationship. Now, I bring this up because a lot of people have unrealistic expectations about how long it takes for an avoidant to regret losing you. They think it'll happen in 30 days, but here's the truth. Chris's story is more in line with reality. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes longer. Sometimes the story ends with the avoidant coming back. Other times, people let go and end up attracting someone even better. Now, every other day we get a post like Chris's in our success story tab. Some about reconciliation, some about healing, but all of them have one thing in common. They follow the exact path we lay out inside the Seiter Super offer. It includes access to all my best courses, weekly live stream coaching, battle buddies for support, and a private community filled with people who get it. And right now, for a limited time, it's all 50% off, but only through the link that you see in the description below. So if you're ready to start your version of Chris's story, whatever that looks like, click the link below and I'll see you inside. So if you thought surviving the Frozen Tundra was hard, wait until you see level 3, the mirror room. Have you ever heard of the chameleon effect? It was first coined in 1999 by psychologists Tanya Chartrand and John Barr. In one of the most famous studies, participants were paired with actors who were secretly instructed to mimic the participants' body language, things like crossing their legs or rubbing their face or tapping their foot. The result? The participants who were mirrored liked the actor more. They felt more connected, more seen, more comfortable. The chameleon effect is basically this. We unconsciously copy the people we're emotionally attuned to, and they end up liking us more because of it. But when an avoidant starts falling for you, this instinct becomes a survival strategy. They don't mirror to build connection, they mirror to hide inside the connection. This is literally what their state of mind will be like. If I act like I like you, maybe you won't see the parts of me I'm ashamed of. If I just reflect your vibe, I don't have to risk showing you my real one. Now, in this level, the avoidant becomes a master mimic, not out of manipulation, but out of fear. They might laugh when you laugh, even if they don't find it funny. They may mirror your texting style, your slang, even your emotional pace. They could share just enough vulnerability to match yours, but never more. It feels like compatibility, but it's really a hall of mirrors, and none of the reflections are them. There's another term that I use for this that I talk about in this video called the magician's cloak. Avoidants have this facade that they place upon themselves, all in an attempt to control the narrative of who they are while keeping their most vulnerable parts hidden. It's like a magician's cloak, flashy enough to distract you, but familiar enough to feel safe. But ultimately, it's an illusion. They show you the versions of themselves that they think you'll fall for. Not because they're trying to deceive you, but because the real them feels unworthy, exposed, or just too messy to risk revealing. And the closer you get, the tighter they pull that cloak around themselves. So in level 3, you're not just navigating a mirror. You're trying to connect with someone who's cloaked their real self in charm, charisma, and emotional mimicry, hoping you'll never notice the difference. And most people don't. They fall in love with the magician, with the performance. They never realize that real connection doesn't happen until the cloak comes off. And that only happens if you make it to level 4. All right, you've made it through the glitch. You've endured the tundra. You've stared into the mirror, but now you enter the world of phantoms. And here's where things start to hurt. This is the level where the avoidant, terrified by how close you're getting, starts emotionally retreating into their past. They summon ghosts. Not literally, but you'll feel it. Suddenly, they're talking about their ex or bringing up how they've never felt that spark again. They'll even say things like, I don't know if I'm capable of real love anymore. You're right in front of them, but they're reaching backwards toward the safe illusion of someone who isn't there. Sometimes it's subtle, just a vague comparison to a past lover. Other times it's brutal. They end things out of nowhere. Say they're not ready, claim it's not you, it's them. And the worst part, they might actually believe it. But what's really happening is this. The feelings they have for you are real, and that terrifies them. So they reach for a phantom, a relationship that's already failed, because that's safer to obsess over, because it's safer to obsess over a memory than face the terrifying vulnerability of being truly seen now. This is known as an emotional deactivating strategy. Avoidants idealize an unavailable or lost love as a way to devalue the person that is actually available to them. It's not about the X, it's about the escape. You know, as I'm going through these levels, I actually keep wondering to myself, is all of this even worth it? Because here in the world of phantoms, the avoidant might literally break up with you. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you're too close to that final level. And I think that's the part that haunts people the most. You do everything right. You pass every test. You stay patient through every glitch, every freeze, every illusion, only to be punished for winning. But this is what they were after all along. They want to push you far enough that you finally reject them, so they don't have to risk you seeing the truth and rejecting who they really are. Remember that avoidant from Reddit I cited earlier? If someone gets me vulnerable and likes me for a time, but ultimately decides they don't like me, or worse, thinks I'm a you-know-what, then that's the ultimate rejection. That's the fear driving every move in this level. They'd rather end it themselves than let you reach the final level and decide they're not enough. So what do? They bury themselves in nostalgia. They ghost. They blame timing. They talk about how things were easier with someone else, but the truth is they're not comparing you to their ex. They're comparing you to their worst fear, that you'll see the real them and walk away. So in their mind, it's better to pre-reject you before you have the chance to truly know them. And that's why this level hurts the most, because it's not just a breakup, it's a retreat right before the breakthrough. So how do you get through the world of phantoms? Well, you let them go completely. Not as a trick, not as reverse psychology, but because you finally accept the truth. You can't force someone to stop running if their greatest fear is being caught. This level isn't won by proving your worth. It's not won by trying to compete with their past. And it's definitely not won by waiting around hoping they'll wake up and see your value. It's won when you stop trying to win at all. You let them choose the ghost. You let them leave. And here's the brutal part. You become okay with the fact that they may never come back. And paradoxically, that's usually when they do. Look, at this point, I've done so many videos on this phenomenon where I've cited real people who have observed it, like Lauren here.
No, I kind of reached a point where I was like, I'm okay if I don't get him back. So I just kind of wanted to I came to a fork in the road. I was like, I either want to move on or I want to ask him, because during the breakup, one of the last things he told me was, maybe I just need some time.
Okay, so why does this work? Well, because for the first time, they don't feel cornered. They don't feel chased. They don't feel like they have to protect themselves from you. They feel your absence, even when they're with someone else. Not your pursuit, not your explanations, not your emotional availability, just your silence, your distance, your decision to move forward without them. And that's the moment their fear of closeness finally has to compete with something stronger, the fear of losing you for good. That's the only thing that ever shakes them out of the phantom world. All right. So far, you survived the glitch, you've made it through the tundra, you've escaped the mirror, and you resisted the pull of the phantoms. And now, you've reached the final level, the inner keep. Now, the inner keep is the most guarded place in the avoidance emotional world. It's where the truth lives. Not the performative truth, not the charming, distant, flirty, ghost summoning truth. The real one. The one underneath the magician's cloak. The one they've been hiding from you, yes, but mostly from themselves. This is the part of them that wants love, but doesn't believe they deserve it. The part that wants closeness, but fears it will collapse under pressure. The part that wants to trust you, but has spent a lifetime trusting no one. And here's the thing about the inner keep. You can't break into it. There's no cheat code, no magic phrase, no game-winning move. They have to invite you in. And most avoidants don't, not because you failed, but because the risk feels too high. So what happens here? Well, two outcomes. The first outcome is they vanish. The final wall goes up, they retreat into their old identity, the one that says relationships never work, no one sticks around, it's safer alone, and then you don't hear from them again. Or you do, but months later after the damage is already done. That's the heartbreak of the inner keep. You almost made it, but they weren't ready. The second outcome is that they stay. They're scared, they're awkward, they're emotionally glitchy, maybe, but they stay. And for the first time, you're not playing a game, you're just with them. No mask, no manipulation, no illusions, just two flawed people trying to figure out what real connection actually looks like. And that's when you know the keep is open, not because you pried it open, but because you proved you could walk away. And they decided not to let you. So, which of these two outcomes is most likely to happen? Honestly, they kick you back to the start. Not once, not twice, over and over again. See, that's the hard part about the inner keep. It's not a clean victory. It's not a moment of swelling music and emotional breakthroughs. It's a cycle. Because right when you think you're close to the real them, they glitch again. They freeze again. They retreat into the phantoms. They'll test your loyalty. They'll mirror you just enough to stay safe. And suddenly you're not at level 5 anymore. You're right back at level 1. That's how you know the inner keep isn't a door, it's a loop, and only the emotionally secure survive the repetition long enough to earn their way in. Because avoidants don't trust once, they trust in layers. And every time they pull away and you don't react with panic or pressure, every time you hold your center instead of trying to fix them, every time you walk, not to punish, but to protect your peace, you're proving something, not just to them, but to the part of them that never believed someone would stay. And eventually, if they're capable and if they're ready, they stop resetting the game. They stop kicking you back to the start. They take a breath and they let you in. But this brings up a real and painful truth. The more times you're kicked back to the start, the more you're looped through the same games again and again, the more it starts to feel emotionally abusive. And for many people, it is. Because here's what no one tells you. You can survive all 5 levels and still lose yourself in the process. You know, I talk a lot about this concept on my live streams, especially with people in our community who are stuck in what I like to call the matrix. They think they're fighting for love, they think they're proving their worth, and they think one more level will finally get them inside the avoidance heart. But what's actually happening is they're trapped, not in a relationship, but in a simulation of one. So in the Matrix, you have Neo. He thinks he's living in the real world. He goes to work, he eats food, he talks to people, but deep down he knows something's wrong. Something feels off. And when he finally takes the red pill, he wakes up and realizes the world he thought was real was just a simulation created to keep him asleep. And honestly, that's what being in a relationship with an avoidant can feel like. You think you're building a future. You think you're making progress. You think they're almost there. But you're not actually in a relationship. You're in a simulation of one powered by your hope, your fantasy, your fear of letting go. And just like Neo, most people don't want to wake up. Because waking up, well, it means facing the truth. Maybe this person isn't going to change. That maybe you've been running in circles trying to win a game that was never winnable. And that's painful, but it's also where freedom begins. Because once you do wake up, once you unplug from the fantasy, you get to see the world for what it really is. And more importantly, you get to see yourself clearly again too. Now earlier I mentioned I had this super offer where we help individuals with avoidance. Well, a big part of that super offer is our community where my team and I help people wake up out of the matrix they are caught in. And the most ironic part, as I've been alluding to throughout this video, is that often it's this very thing that makes the avoidance come running back. So if you want access to the community, live streams with me, my entire course library for a 50% discount, just look in the description below and click the link you see there.